A routine trip to the supermarket takes a shocking turn when a black man finds himself targeted by two white officers for no reason other than their own prejudice. With shoppers looking on, the officers humiliate him, throwing around their authority like a weapon. He's calm, dignified, refusing to give them the reaction they're looking for. But just when it seems like there's no way out of this unfair situation, another figure steps in. A black sheriff, a man who spent years upholding true justice, watches the scene unfold. His presence alone shifts the energy in the room. He's seen enough, and he's not about to let this slide. What happens next will turn the tables in a way no one expects. These officers thought they were above the law, but they're about to learn a lesson they'll never forget. Stay tuned, because justice is coming. The supermarket falls silent as the black sheriff steps forward, his badge catching the light. The officers, still gripping the man's arm, hesitate for the first time. They don't recognize him. Maybe they assume he's just another bystander. But the weight in his voice when he speaks stops them cold. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asks, his tone steady but firm. The officers exchange glances, their confidence wavering. One clears his throat and mutters something about suspicious behavior, but it's clear they have no real reason for detaining the man. The sheriff doesn't look away. His eyes move from the officers to the man still standing tall, frustration simmering beneath his calm demeanor. People in the store watch closely now, sensing the shift. The officers, who moments ago were so sure of their power, suddenly seem uncertain, and in that moment, they realize they picked the wrong day to abuse their authority. One of the officers, a tall man with a rigid stance, tightens his grip on the black man's arm, as if doubling down on his authority. "This is police business," he says, trying to dismiss the sheriff. But the sheriff doesn't budge. His steady gaze makes it clear. He's not here to be ignored. The man being detained looks at the sheriff, a flicker of hope in his eyes, but also a caution. He's seen situations like this before. He knows how quickly things can escalate, but there's something different this time. The sheriff isn't just another bystander afraid to step in. There's something in his presence, in the way he stands his ground, that feels like a shift in power. The second officer glances around, noticing the growing crowd. Some people have their phones out, recording. The air is thick with unspoken tension. The officers thought they could act without consequences, but now, for the first time, they're the ones under a watchful eye. The sheriff takes a slow step forward, his voice calm but laced with authority. "Let him go," he says, his eyes locking onto the officers. The taller one hesitates, his fingers still clenched around the man's arm. He looks at his partner, as if searching for backup, but the second officer shifts uncomfortably. The weight of the moment is pressing down on them. The phone's recording, the silent crowd, and most of all, the sheriff, his presence alone, making it clear they're no longer in control. Still, the officer refuses to back down. He was acting suspicious, he insists, though his voice isn't as steady as before. The sheriff tilts his head slightly, his patience wearing thin. "Suspicious how?" he asks. The officer opens his mouth, but no real answer comes. He knows it. The crowd knows it. And now the sheriff has backed them into a corner where the truth can't be ignored. The tension thickens. The sheriff reaches for his radio, and the officers' faces go pale. They know what's coming next. Just as the sheriff lifts his radio, a voice cuts through the tension. "Wait." A manager in a crisp store uniform steps forward, his face uneasy. He glances at the officers, then at the sheriff. "There's security footage," he says. "Maybe we should check it." For a moment, no one speaks. The officers seem frozen, caught between pride and panic. The sheriff doesn't move either, but his silence speaks volumes. He's giving them one last chance to do the right thing. The taller officer lets go of the man's arm, his fingers twitching as he steps back. The second officer shifts uncomfortably, sweat forming at his temple. The sheriff doesn't look away. "Good idea," he finally says, his voice even. The manager leads them toward the back of the store. The officers hesitate, their confidence cracking, because deep down they know, Whatever that footage shows could change everything. And now there's no turning back. The small security room is silent except for the hum of the monitor as the store manager pulls up the footage. The sheriff stands with his arms crossed, watching the screen closely. The officers shift uncomfortably, their confidence unraveling. Then the video plays. The footage is clear. There's the black man, browsing the aisles, minding his business. There's no theft, no suspicious behavior. Then the officers appear, approaching him with no cause. The way they grab him, the way they escalate without reason, it's all there, undeniable. The sheriff exhales slowly, shaking his head. That's all I needed to see. He turns to the officers. Badge numbers. Now. The taller officer opens his mouth, but no words come out. His partner looks down, defeated. They know they're done. But before the sheriff can radio it in, the black man speaks for the first time. Actually, I'd like to press charges. The room goes still. The officers, who moments ago thought they controlled everything, now realize this isn't just about discipline, it's about accountability. And this time, they won't be walking away so easily. The sheriff nods at the man's words, respecting his decision. You have every right, he says firmly. The officers, now pale and silent, don't even try to argue. Their authority, once abused, has crumbled in the face of real justice. Store employees and customers outside the security room wait anxiously. When the sheriff steps out, the look on his face says it all. Justice is being served. The black man walks out behind him, his dignity intact, no longer just another victim of unchecked power. As the officers are escorted out for further investigation, the crowd watches, some shaking their heads, others nodding in approval. The sheriff meets the man's eyes one last time. If you ever need anything, you call me, he says. The man smiles, gratitude in his eyes. Today, the system worked as it should, and this time, the right people were held accountable.